Austin Tech Connect is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. Founded in 1992, ATC exists to help unite the local technology ecosystem and to encourage the spread of community, collaboration, and conversations in Central Texas. This podcast is sponsored by SailPoint. They are a leading provider of identity security for the modern enterprise, empowering organizations worldwide to put identity security at the core of their business. With a foundation of artificial intelligence and machine learning, SailPoint Identity Security delivers the right access to the right identities and resources at the right time. Now, here is this week's episode.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Austin Tech Connect. This is the official podcast of the Austin Technology Council. For those of you who are regular listeners, you know, because I say it most weeks, the Austin Technology Council is a 32-year-old organization that was founded to help bring our tech community together and grow the ecosystem. 32 years later, we're reinventing. We're looking at how do we bring the community even closer together and back together as we look to where Austin is going in the future. Every single week, we bring to the show interviews with people around town who make an impact on our tech scene. And this week, I am really excited because we are joined by a legend here in Austin, and that is Dr. James Truchard. Now, for those of you who don't know Dr. T, as he is called by his friends, he is the founder of National Instruments, one of Austin's great success stories. He earned his Ph.D. and learned a lot about the test and measurement world. And in 1976, he founded the company because he told me he didn't want to leave Austin and he wanted to work with engineers and scientists. So he self-funded the company, never missed a payroll. And since then, the company continued to grow and grow and grow, working in the area of test and measurement for computers and PCs. We'll talk a little bit more about where the company went and how it grew, but it is one of those local legends. A few years back, he retired from National Instruments, which is now part of Emerson, and he is now dedicating most of his life to research around Alzheimer's. So we'll talk a little bit more about that too. Hey, Dr. Truchard, welcome to Austin Tech Connect.
Thank you.
So let's go back in the Wayback Machine a little bit. So you were getting a PhD. Not all PhDs have that entrepreneurial spark in them. So let's talk about those early days in the 70s when you were finishing up your PhD and what caused you to start your own company.
I was working in a university research lab, and basically along working full time while I was getting my PhD on the side. And we were basically in testing the Navy's sonar systems, their beamformers, the sonar transducers, and we did some major projects in this area that sort of gave us the experience of how we could build software-based instrumentation. So with the basic concept, not the products themselves, but the basic concept, we had an idea of our vision of what we wanted to do for National Instruments.
Nice. So, the company, you started off, but by the time I got to Austin in 1991, you guys were a pretty big company. You were growing. What was the early days of the company like, and how did it grow so fast?
Well, we moonlighted for 3 years, three of us, along with some help for manufacturing product sales and so forth. Jeff, Bill, and I would moonlight. I was actually supervising Bill Nallen's master's thesis at the same time and working full-time at the university research laboratory. So in those days, it was evenings and weekends between soccer games and things like that I would work on the company, both its sales and marketing area and in general administration. And then in the end, I also physically designed some of our hardware as well. Jeff was the software engineer. Bill worked on hardware as well. He was also working on his master's thesis, so that added to the fray as we were trying to put it all together.
So what caused sort of that entrepreneurial spark? Like I said, I know a lot of PhDs, and a lot of them would never dream of starting a company that way and bootstrapping it and working it on the side. Where did that come from in you?
Well, I grew up on a farm. I went to one teacher school, and we went to school. Then when we came home, we worked. We did both things manual in those days, and so we work ethic became very much a part of who I am.
So the company was one, if I remember correctly, the company was one of the first companies to really be selling on the internet when the days of sort of, everybody starting to get a browser and things like that. You had said to me before we started that you started off using sort of outsized reps to sell the products, and then you took it all in-house. And then when the internet came along, you guys jumped right in. Not everybody was right there doing sales via the internet and being able to integrate everything that way. What was that all about back in the days, and how did you foresee that?
Well, in 1991, we started using software to configure and help the customer select the product. It's kind of the way you buy an automobile if you want to put all the options together yourself. So you could the customer could select the options they wanted and the products and the combination of software that would go with it. And that was done on floppy disks first in 91. But it was clear that there could be a better way. And so as the internet 93-ish timeframe was evolving, we started using the tools actually that were used on it to do internet websites to build these configurators, as we call them, so that we could help the customer select the right combination of products. And then it was just a natural step to move it to actual use of the internet itself. And just at one point in 1995, we paid $500,000 for NI.com because we recognized how critical having a very simple, easy to remember name was for the company.
So that's interesting. I mean, nowadays it's not uncommon for people to go out and pay a large sum of money for the URL that matches their company name, but that's a lot of money back in 1995 to buy a URL, isn't it?
That is correct. But we, at that time already appreciated the value that could be created by having a simple, easy to remember your URL.
So one of the things I remember over the years, because I've been involved around the tech community since the early 90s, one of the things I remember, and I didn't know you, but one of the things about your reputation and National Instruments' reputation was the growth strategy and the strategy to the overall company. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about sort of your business thoughts around the growth of a company, sustainability of a company. Let's talk about what gave you the cutting edge there to have a company be so successful with you at the helm for so long. What was the strategy piece all about?
Well, at the core is a platform. It started out simple. We interfaced instruments to computers, and it proved to be an ideal starting point because we were sort of neutral in the instrumentation business at first. We were able to talk to our key competitor was at that time Hewlett Packard, but all the other instrument vendors would use our interface to connect their instruments to computer. That gave us a very broad reach of customers in the marketplace. And with time, we started building alternatives around computer-based solutions to make the measurements themselves. So we had a built-in marketplace where we already knew the customers, and over time we could just add to the capabilities and the range of measurements that we could make. So it made a very straightforward strategy. Now we recognized we needed software that could integrate this all together. At the time, people generally use basic programming languages to do their configuration of systems, automated system. So we looked for the best idea we could come up with that would be much more efficient. And we said we want to do for test and measurement what the spreadsheet did for financial analysis. And I worked with Jeff for 2 years, Jeff Godosky, and we came up with LabVIEW. And LabVIEW delivered on that vision. You could build systems from very simple systems to make a simple measurement to very, very complex systems, all with the same platform. And on with the combination of hardware we had with that software, that would enable us to redefine the marketplace where the efficiency for customers getting their jobs done was very, very high. And it proved to be very effective. And to this day, it's still the best solution for configuring and building these kind of test and measurement systems.
So what advice do you have for some of these young entrepreneurs? You know, the average age of an Austinite is somewhere around 30 years old. And that was actually true 30 and 40 years ago as well. So we've continued to stay a very young, vibrant, entrepreneurial city, even though our population has tripled in size over the last 30 years. But there's a lot of younger entrepreneurs who are coming up within Austin. What advice do you have to them about building a company that's going to grow and be sustainable?
Well, first off, just a little bit of advice that probably hasn't worked. I tried to give people advice on how we did it. I don't know if it's the level of intensity that we had to work at or what, but I have not had that much success with self-finance, just go off. And the general conflict is you got to make a living at the same time you're getting started. And we did that first by moonlighting, and then we did it just by having enough sales that we paid our salaries and the bills we needed to self-finance it. That's a hard thing to do, I guess, because I really haven't succeeded in giving advice consistently that did that. Now, Austin is quite different than it was in 1976. Venture capital is much more readily available. There's much more of a climate. Students are graduating with much more training on entrepreneurship and the like. So the environment has changed quite a bit in terms. In my case, George Kosmeski would hold his seminars and a variety of events, and I was participating in those, and that was a great help for me in learning the business side of things, because we bring in all the typical accountants and legal folks that would give you advice on how things ought to be done. I also read a lot of books, literally hundreds of books on each topic that I needed to learn about. And then whether it was general management, whether it was financial side. So I learned by reading heavily, and then, of course, by doing.
You know, it's interesting you bring up Dr. George Kosmeski. So many people who I've interviewed on the show who were around in the 70s, 80s, and very early 90s, many of the entrepreneurs really credit him with the fact that he always was willing to be there, to give ideas, to connect people. It was said in his autobiography, as far as being part of the Austin community, as busy as he was, both as an academic and on a lot of committees around academia around the country, on some business forums for presidents of the United States and other things. No matter how busy he was and how overextended his schedule was, that if someone in Austin needed him, if it was good for the Austin community, he was there. He would find a way to show up. And even for individuals, he held office hours every morning for graduate students and others. How important do you think it is for young entrepreneurs to find, somebody like that they can listen to and learn from along the way? How important is direct and indirect mentorship?
Well, these folks are very important for inspiration and also assurance that it's possible, and the basic details of accounting and legal and so forth that go with that. And it definitely played a big role in my own success. The other area, of course, was our research laboratory. A previous spin-out had been Truchard, and so I tried to learn from folks who were involved in the spin-out of Truchard as another source of information to really learn the nuts and bolts of a business.
It's interesting you bring up Truchard, because a lot of people, since I've taken this job with the Austin Technology Council little over 2 years ago, I've probably sat down with 200 people in Austin. And I'll ask the question about sort of the history of tech in Austin. I now do a speech called The History of Austin Tech, because a lot of people don't really understand. And when I say who was the first company out of Austin that sort of grew and went public, most people jump straight to Dell Computer, but they don't realize that it was actually, Truchard that was sort of the first big local success, that it was able to inspire sort of the local people that, hey, you can spin out, you can go public, you can continue to grow. Any thoughts about those early days before Austin was a big business community? What was it like doing a tech business in Austin in the 70s?
I'll take area of marketing and advertising as one. So TI also at that time was fairly, had a good presence in Austin. So we had a guy who actually was working at TI, but on the side, he helped us with advertising. So those were important functions. And I'm sure it's the same today where, the internet and the ins and outs of internet, how do you do the variety of marketing that you need to do in the internet. So I'm sure it changed. It's different, but it's still the same needs. And having folks around that are doing this, whether it was IBM or TI or Truchard, we also sold to military, so Truchard was more influential there. Having these folks that you can look at and maybe see at cocktail parties, wherever else, to ask that question you've been on your mind for some time is all helpful in creating what I call the critical mass for success. You have to have a critical mass of understanding of the ins and outs of things to be successful, and the community can contribute to that substantially.
Well, one of the things I talk about in the speech that I give about the history of Austin Tech is there was a handful of companies that really did exactly what you said. They brought the expertise to Austin that maybe didn't exist here before that. And, we think about, several of these companies that started locally or were like the TIs and the IBMs who brought people here, were national companies. And then there's a handful of companies, yours being one of them, that really did spin off sort of the next generation of entrepreneurs and investors, right? There was obviously Dell, there was Tivoli, there was Trilogy, there was National Instruments, and several others that actually, people came to Austin to be part of these companies and then invested in other companies, they mentored other people, or they started their own businesses. And so, one of the things that you're known for was cultivating really good people and attracting really good people to National Instruments. And, when you were inducted into the Austin Hall of Fame, you were out of town, you weren't able to be at the event, but about a dozen different people talked about when they had been at National Instruments or they knew you through some other thing, and just how good you were to people. How important is it, that people aspect of business?
Well, that was a key focus. We were on the top 100 places to work for years. For me, it started with the simple interest in the technology and how we could differentiate with it. So I tried to work as often as possible directly, mainly to inspire these very bright and talented people we had. We had a big vision for what we wanted to do for the test and measurement marketplace and the productivity we wanted to create. So sharing that vision and then bringing it to their specific interest area they were working on. And then also looking at individuals and trying to maximize their opportunity by observing their talents, their background and knowledge, so that each person was opportunity and ability to be successful was optimized. So that was very much a part of what I did. And I think people enjoyed seeing paths that in many ways I was just kind of showing them a little bit and letting them get it and take it on where they could drive a path for their career that realized their own reason for being an engineer or reason for being in technology.
So, as I mentioned, this year you were inducted as one of the first inductees into the Austin Tech Hall of Fame. And the Austin Tech Hall of Fame probably should have been started 20 years ago. So the way we're getting it launched is over the next 6 or 7 years, we're inducting 8 what I call sort of legacy foundational members. And then every year we'll have a current inductee as well. So you were one of those first 8 legacy inductees into the Hall of Fame, along with Dr. George Kosmetsky, Michael Dell, Dr. Butler, and then while we were there, also, not everybody could be there. Of course, Dr. Kosmetsky has passed away, and Lori Hawkins had passed away, but most of the people were there. And it was it was Admiral Bobby Inman who, when he got up to accept his award, I had told everybody to get 2 or 3 minutes, and the Admiral was funny. He goes, "I'm an old man. I'm going to take a little longer." And he talked for about, 5 or 6 minutes about the experience of Austin when he moved here in the 80s through the 90s and forward. You weren't able to be there. You were traveling and away on a vacation. So I want to give you a few minutes to accept your award and take as much time as you want. What would you say if you had been able to be there personally at the Hall of Fame and we said, and now the next inductee, Dr. James Truchard, what would you say to the audience in accepting that award?
Well, I basically would try to share. First off, almost always I tried to give credit to Dr. Kosmetsky because of the very influential role he played in Austin's success in technology and software. I was at the first meeting of the Austin Software Council, and I remember his words to this day. And he was really inspirational in setting a vision of what Austin could be. And my statement at that time was, if we simply repeated that Austin is the software capital of the world often enough to enough visitors and press and so forth, we could be that. And I think with time that proved to be fairly true. So basically, I always spoke a lot about vision, how important a vision is, an overarching vision that talks about what you're trying to do for your customers, for the world. We always try to tie that vision to present circumstances. In technology, it was the rise of the PC and how the PC was transforming what could be done. The performance of processor, the software, and so forth was a major building block for our product. So enunciating that vision in a way that connects to customers on one side and connects to the employees on the other, so they get it. If I take this technology for this customer and add the value that's needed to solve whatever problem is, I can be successful. So using that vision in every aspect of your work, communication with customers, the selling process, as well as observing, using it to help you understand what technology can be valuable for you, the PCs, the internet, all these things became part of the base that you would build your vision on. And then having the vision open-ended so it could keep growing as opportunities increase themselves. A big area for us was the performance of analog to digital converters. As it increased, this expanded our market opportunity. Tracking those curves that would predict where we could go over time was an important point. And then, of course, making sure that the employees and the customers understood our vision so we maximize our opportunity.
Nice. Well, again, congratulations on being inducted into the Austin Tech Hall of Fame. I'm glad we gave you a couple of seconds to give that acceptance speech that you weren't able to give back in June. So that's actually a great transition into a couple of my final questions. And that is, Let's talk about Austin. We talked a little bit about what it was like starting a company back in the 70s and the 80s, but Austin's come a long, long way. The Austin that George Kosmetsky envisioned at that first Austin Software Council meeting, which of course the Austin Software Council became the Austin Technology Council, when he talked about the fact if we just put it out there, right? I mean, part of Austin's success came from this direct and indirect marketing of Austin as this tech hub, as this innovation center, as you said, is the software capital of the world. We, as a community, we came together and had that vision, and we said it enough times, and we sort of brought it into fruition. I don't know that Dr. Kosmetsky could have predicted that we would have the Austin that we have today. I think that the growth that we've, gone under the last 15 years has been incredible. But with that also comes challenges. So where are we today? What's Austin as a tech hub, as an innovation center? What are we doing well, and what should we do to plan for the future?
Well, when I first came up to Austin, chicken fried steak was $1.05 at the Hilton Cafe. And Austin was a very inexpensive place to live. Restaurants weren't near as good as they are now. There were only a few really great ones, and they had the standard several steaks, some kind of fish, and then maybe some other dish, sometimes a Chinese one. And that was our restaurant choice. Obviously, that's changed to where Austin now is one of the favorite places to go to a very fine restaurant. So we've come a long way in that. But the affordability of Austin is a serious problem because things like our music capital of the world is greatly impacted by the fact that housing is so expensive and cost of living is expensive. So I'd say that's a challenge. I'm not sure how we solve that one, but basically it does now have the critical mass for very high technology. We're really now literally doing some of the top technology in the world. Areas like microprocessor design, almost anybody who's anybody in microprocessor design has an operation here in Austin. So we've come a long way. We've been very successful. Now we have to learn how to build on that success to keep it going the right way, keep cost in line so people can live here, make sure the University of Texas is growing with us and growing with the needs of the community as well.
How important is it for the next generation of successful, young, growth-oriented entrepreneurs to get involved in the community, to show up once in a while for the Chamber of Commerce, to show up at the Austin Technology Council, and to sort of be present? There seems to be a trend where, people tend to do more private things rather than community things. Back in your day, you all were there. You all came and sat around the table. How important is it for this next generation to show up to be leaders?
Well, we had an advantage. We didn't have many choices of things you could go to.
Well, that's true.
We had to go to whatever was there. So it's that's maybe a challenge now, is trying to figure out which things are important to you and where you can be helpful and where you can be inspirational to other people. So I'd say that is probably the challenge now, and it's certainly the case for me, as to, okay, which things you want to engage in, because you can only go to so many things now, except for the president of the university, Jay, has to go to almost every night, significant event, but the rest of us may want to do some other things as well. So it is a challenge. So you have to be very selective and figure out, I use books as well to learn, figure out what things can help and how you can help other people as well.
So I said in the introduction that since you've retired, you've dedicated a lot of your time to work on research and supportive research for Alzheimer's. Talk about how you got involved with that and about the award that you funded and led. And let's talk a little bit about the future of that and how we can, as a people, maybe help combat this horrible disease.
So my first wife had a stroke back in 94 and lived for 18 years, gradually declining. So while she didn't have Alzheimer's, she ended up with many of the symptoms that an Alzheimer patient would have. So that was probably, and I did some background looking at explanation, and I learned what the basic traits of impairments she had and why they were there. So I guess that was the starting point of looking at this. Plus, Alzheimer has, dementia has run in my family, so it was some motivation there as well. And it was a hard problem. I like hard problems to work on. So and I use a hands-on approach. I don't just give a block of money to someone and say, go do it. I'm literally looking at who might have good answers, and then I go work directly with them. So I'm sort of in between what you could call funding and then the basic research. So my next project is designed to try to integrate all these ideas. It's my theory that there's multiple paths to dementia, and if you don't track all of them, and one of the reasons almost weekly, you'll see a headline saying Alzheimer's solved. We got a new therapy. It's going to do the trick. And it doesn't, because it's only one aspect of the problem. And until we come up with an approach. So I'm using an approach similar to what I used in software to get a way to visualize all the pieces of a puzzle so we can put the puzzle together in a more, you could call it more like an engineer would solve the problem. We know if you have an engine, it isn't just one component that can fail. The whole thing has to work together, and that's kind of what the brain needs, and we need a way to visualize. So I call the project Visualization for AI rather than AI. And with National Instruments and LabVIEW, we spent a lot of time looking at how to visualize information. So this is in that same vein of trying to find a better way for scientists to look at all the pieces of the puzzle in not maybe simultaneously, but in an organized way. Because what I found is almost none of the scientists knew all the pieces of the puzzle that it looked to me like you need to solve the problem.
So let's talk about the prize that you sponsored, that you said that you had a bunch of entries and 10 finalists. Tell me about that.
That's right. So it was a substantial prize, and it was a personal prize, $2 million first prize. Although in the end, we split up the first prize 4 ways because we didn't really have anybody who answered the question at the top level. So we had 4 first prize winners, and it was a total of 10, total of $4 million in funding for it, as well as $1 million for UT San Antonio to administer and solicit the entries. And people worked hard because this was a personal prize, and if you won, it was good. And so we got, like I said, 156 well-done entries, and so it's like something for me to mine to find the best ideas that we could use going forward. And that's what I intend to do in my next project, which I'm already set up at the University of Texas here in Austin.
Nice. So as we wrap this up, you are what I would call sort of one of our living legends here in Austin. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you would like people to know about either your career or about Austin or about the future?
Well, I wish everybody luck in their role in founding, starting a company, and making a difference, making sure that what you're doing adds value to society. That's very important because we can see now we've got technologies out there that seem to be turning us into digital tribes where we're literally living, I guess our genes were built around tribes. So we now have digital tribes where everybody is in one point of view, another, and not getting the cross communication that's needed to keep it not becoming tribal. So I'd say it's very important look at technology and making sure it's adding true value for society in the long haul.
Awesome. Well, Dr. James Truchard, thank you so much for being a guest here on Austin Tech Connect. And thank you to everybody who tuned in and listened. I say it all the time. If we didn't have a growing audience, why would we do this show? Please make sure that you're sharing this podcast with everybody who you work with so that every week you can hear from local people who are making a difference here in Austin. And is your company a member of the Austin Technology Council? We're in the middle of rebranding, reinventing, and finding a new path for this 32-year-old organization, and we can't do it without you. We can't be a grassroots organization without the grassroots leaders. So please make sure that your company is supporting ATC right now. You can find out more information at austintechnologycouncil.org.
Thanks for listening to the Austin Tech Connect podcast. Make sure your company is a member of the Austin Technology Council and add your voice to the future of our tech ecosystem in Central Texas.